Happy Friday, everybody. You know what that means? It's the main event, the show of shows. Petree's Pit, and I'm joined today by my tag team partner in business, the Tully Blanchard to my Arn Anderson, JDOGG, Jordan. How's it going, brother?
Going good, man. Ready for it.
Ready for it. All right. Today we have last week. I guess we'll start there. Last week we want to thank everyone for the support, checking out the video. Got a lot of great feedback. Talking about Triple H not being in the top 50. A lot of people disagreed with us, but that's okay. That's why we do this. It's about conversation. We talked about last week how we're not always going to do episodes about current events, things that are going on in the business right now. This week we are going to be talking about things going on right now, specifically Crown Jewel, and probably the biggest angle right now in wrestling, and that's the Bloodline versus the original Bloodline, or the Bloodline versus the new Bloodline, however you want to look at it. But I think for the last 4 years, this is what the WWE has gravitated around, and it continues to do so because Roman Reigns is the biggest star in wrestling. So, Jordan, I'll let you talk to him, Jordan. Tell him about Crown Jewel. We're not going to talk about every match because the Saudi Arabia shows are not canon events. The results don't matter. Greatest Royal Rumble, doesn't matter who won it. I heard the Brothers of Destruction wrestled DX at one of these shows.
It was one of the worst matches of all time.
I don't think they're not canon. This stuff doesn't matter. So, there were a few interesting matches, a few interesting results. So, tell them about it, Jordan.
I mean, basically the only two matches that really had any kind of, interesting things happen with it was, one was Cody and Gunther, which, I mean, it wasn't like, it was just hey, these are the two world champions, they're going to wrestle each other. There was no story behind it. But, it was Cody versus Gunther. It was a really good match. Both really good wrestlers, at the top of their game right now. Cody obviously wins. He wins the, Crown Jewel title, whatever. Doesn't really matter. The results of it, though, I thought was interesting because it wasn't like Cody, just beat him, clean. It was like he kind of got him as, he rolled him up out of a sleeper hold and, beat him 1, 2, 3. So it reserves a match in the future between these two where the stakes are higher. It means more. It's at a show people actually care about. And, it also, it doesn't hurt Gunther because it's kind of like he didn't get beat flat in the middle of the ring. He got rolled up on basically. And so I think it was a good way of, it got Cody a win and kept Gunther from, looking like a punk. He's still the world champ. He still, gave him a good match, and he's still, a threat down the line. But I think it was a good way to do the match without losing anything from it.
Most devastating move in sports entertainment: surprise roll up.
Yep. Yeah, it was definitely good. And then the other part, the main part, obviously, as we talked about, the Bloodline and the OG Bloodline, the biggest storyline going on in wrestling right now. It was Roman Reigns and the newly reformed Usos, Jey Uso and Jimmy Uso, against the new Bloodline in Solo and excuse me, was Jacob Fatu and then Tama Tonga?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
One of the Tongas, yeah. Whichever one. And obviously this was kind of what everybody was looking forward to from this. And pretty surprising for me, I think, was that Roman actually took the pin, which I wouldn't have expected.
Mm-hmm.
But it is interesting because I think it's kind of given, because obviously they're trying to build Solo up to be obviously not the same caliber as Roman Reigns, but giving him, the gravitas of saying that he is the tribal chief and hey, he just beat the guy who was slash is the tribal chief. He's calling himself the original tribal chief, and so I think it was pretty surprising that Roman was the one who took that pin, especially because of how rare it's been over the last few years that he's taken pinfalls. Um, so I guess I would say to you, were you surprised that Roman got pinned?
Well, I go back to the Saudi Arabian shows; they don't matter, so they're not canon events. So yeah, I am surprised he got pinned. I mean, Roman Reigns has an air of inviolability to him that he doesn't get pinned. He doesn't do jobs,
Yeah,
as they would say in the business. But on the other hand, to me, I guess we joke that they don't matter, but I mean they do because they're
yeah. I mean, Roman Reigns taking a pinfall. I mean that's a pretty big thing, even if it's on a show that no one that isn't really that important.
yeah, it's a big deal, and it's big for Solo because we've talked about on this show, and certainly we've talked about privately that I just don't feel like Solo Sikoa is really a top guy. He's not. He was in the main event of SummerSlam. Okay, sure, but he's not on that level yet. And this goes a ways, I suppose, of making him look like he's bigger than he is. That his talent and profile exceeds, the bottom line, the results that he can produce. Um, was it the right decision? Do you think it made Solo look better?
Oh yeah, for sure. I definitely think it was the right move. Uh, I mean, I know that I don't think we're the biggest Solo fans, but I think over this whole new Bloodline thing that they've been doing, I think he's really stepped it up. He's talking on the mic better. He's kind of showing a little bit of personality. The crowd is, he's got so much heat with the crowd and the right type of heat, not the bad type.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think that if you're trying to make a bloodline versus bloodline thing, you want the guy on either side of it to have that, that stature of being worthy of being called tribal chief, for him to pin Roman in the middle of the ring, I think that goes a long way in giving him that stature and that credibility of being, a main eventer.
I guess we can go back to Cody and Gunther later. I think the crux of what we're talking about really is the bloodline, and we'll just get right into it because this is going to continue building towards a War Games match at Survivor Series. The rumor is it's going to be 4-on-4 as opposed to the traditional 5-on-5. And from the looks of it, our lineups are Solo Sikoa, Jacob Fatu, and Tama Tonga and Tongaloa. It's going to be versus Roman Reigns, the Usos, and it seems like Sami Zayn is going to be the fourth member. They're going to reunite the bloodline as it was when Roman was champion. Um, I guess, this was a good way for them to give the new bloodline a win, building towards Survivor Series because we expect Roman and the bloodline to win that match in War Games, right? I mean, I think that's
Mm-hmm.
a conclusion. Um, Do you think there's a possibility that they lose at War Games and this continues building towards a singles match between these two at a later date?
I mean, that's kind of what I've been going back and forth on. It's like, on the one hand, you would think that reviving the OG bloodline to try to take down this new bloodline that has been categorized as being, wild, out of control, violent. Um, it wouldn't surprise me just thinking back on how WWE does these types of things, where it's kind of the old Vince McMahon adage of send them home happy.
Yeah.
And that obviously we know about the whole thing with the Nexus and how they killed that SummerSlam. So we've seen them do these type of things where you would think a match like this would be better served for the new bloodline to win because it would keep that storyline going, um, as opposed to having the OG bloodline win just for it to be a nice ending to the show. Um, so it wouldn't surprise me. I think it depends on how long you're trying to prolong this thing. Like, obviously, everybody's talked about pretty much since this thing started about how Survivor Series, War Games, New Bloodline versus OG Bloodline. I mean, they were talking about this thing when they first got going.
Mm-hmm.
So it's been something that's been building. Um, so yeah, it really all depends on what they're planning on doing afterwards. I mean, if they're planning on trying to keep Solo in the main event picture, obviously it seemed like they had really big things planned for Jacob Fatu, and rightfully so. Um, so I mean, you could do it either way. I think. I mean, you could have the OG Bloodline win and pin one of the Tonkas, and it's not really going to hurt anybody.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think it would be pretty interesting if like Jacob Fatu were to get the pin on like Roman or somebody like that. There's a lot of different ways you could do it.
Yeah.
So it's really hard to say right now how they could where they could go with it. Um, but yeah, it's going to be pretty big, exciting match nonetheless.
Survivor Series is interesting because it's at the end of November, but then there's no pay-per-views in December, and then you're waiting until the end of January for the Royal Rumble. I mean, I know in the past they've done day one, but I mean, for the most part, there's no December pay-per-views in the WWE. So if you do, if it doesn't end in Survivor Series, you're waiting until the Royal Rumble to have a pay-per-view payoff or a premium live event payoff. I'm sorry. Um, it's interesting. It'll be interesting to see how long this continues. I don't know if I want it to continue until the Royal Rumble or let alone until WrestleMania. But because the Royal Rumble is a good spot to kind of start a clean slate on things. Building towards the Royal Rumble is a way to start generating new feuds and things like that. But like we've said, this is the biggest feud in wrestling right now. People are really interested in Roman Reigns. They've really become interested in Solo Sikoa. You listen to the crowd reaction on Raw when Sami Zayn comes out and confronts the Usos. People love these guys and this story, and there's so much equity in it that it's sort of hard to imagine at any point that it's going to be abandoned, right?
Oh yeah, I mean, you figure we haven't even seen The Rock be re-entered into this thing yet,
Yeah.
and I mean, I'm sure he's going to play a pivotal role in WrestleMania somehow with this. Um, so yeah, I mean, I don't think that Survivor Series is really going to be the end of this. Um, and it's kind of why I say I think you know, are you going to keep having it be the sort of new bloodline versus OG bloodline, or are you going to kind of split it off into singular things where Roman's obviously going to have his own thing about wanting to win the title back. He's made that clear. Um, Jey Uso's obviously been, he's main event Jey Uso now. Are you going to keep him entangled in the bloodline thing and have him, not really do the single stuff he was doing? Um, there's there's a lot of different ways they could do this. And I think, like we said with The Rock, you never know. I mean, if The Rock gets involved in this thing, him being a part of it could be a way where they could have these groups still feuding with each other, but then it kind of be Roman versus Rock type of deal. Um, so yeah, it's tough. Like you said, it's a slow kind of build through December because there's no big shows really till the Rumble and then Elimination Chamber and so on.
Yeah.
So it's tough. They have a lot of different ways they could do this. There's a lot of different things they could do, a lot of different matches they could try to have to kind of keep the interest and keep building towards whatever they're trying to build towards for WrestleMania.
Is there a possibility that The Rock doesn't get involved with the bloodline again and he's solely focused on beating Cody Rhodes? Is that a possibility that you could see happening?
I would say no, simply because when he came back at Bad Blood, they kind of made a point of showing Solo kind of being like, yeah, this like this is what's supposed to happen.
Yeah.
He's here with us. So I don't think they would have done that if The Rock wasn't going to be involved in that. Um, and it could be a situation where The Rock is kind of like the puppet master behind the scenes, and I think we've talked about this before.
Yeah.
With the whole story that The Rock is kind of the one propping up Solo and kind of pushing him to take over, so that The Rock can kind of have the guy he wants in charge of the bloodline, where he has that influence, sort of like a nefarious wise man. Like, he's the one in Solo's ear telling him to turn on Roman, telling him to do this, telling him who to bring into this new bloodline. Um, so yeah, I feel like he's got to be involved somehow. I don't think you could just have The Rock involved and with Roman and not have the new bloodline involved, because otherwise they're just going to be sent off to the side.
Yeah.
And I doubt they wanted to build these guys up that much just to throw them to the side for The Rock.
I think Paul Heyman will eventually rejoin the Bloodline, the original Bloodline before War Games. Do you think the new Bloodline needs a manager, or do you think that The Rock could suffice in that role? Just in terms of the sake of symmetry, let's say that both teams have a manager. Do you think it should be The Rock or someone else, maybe?
Well, I mean, I've always been a big fan of managers, just in general. I've always thought it was a travesty that they don't really have managers in wrestling anymore, at least on a wider spread scale. Because I think there's a lot of guys that could use a manager who are not very good at talking, who can kind of. I mean, look what MVP's done for Bobby Lashley.
Absolutely.
I mean that was one of the biggest issues that Bobby had early on in his career, was he couldn't talk.
Yep.
And as soon as he gets put in with MVP, obviously then he's he's WWE champion. He's doing bigger and better things now. So I think managers are great in general, and I think for the new bloodline especially, I mean, on that in that group, who do you have besides Solo talks? I mean, neither of the Tongas really talk. Jacob Fatu just kind of yells.
Yeah.
Which makes sense for his character. He's supposed to be crazy.
Yeah.
So I think having The Rock be your mouthpiece, then you can't really find anybody better.
Yeah.
So I think that would be the natural way of kind of bringing him in there, as kind of him being Solo's wise man. I think it would definitely benefit the new bloodline a lot if they were to have him be their manager, because I mean, I don't see anybody else who could. At least right off hand, that would make sense to put in as a manager.
Tamina? But she's not in the company right now, isn't she? She left.
Yeah, I don't think she is. But like I said, I mean, then you're just, it makes sense because The Rock is involved.
Yeah, sure.
Like, he's already there. He's already involved. I mean, so to bring in somebody else who really hasn't been involved with any of these guys so far, I don't think would make sense. So it would kind of naturally fit.
Yeah.
Like, he can come in. There's a reason why he's there. There's a reason why he's, he can be like, like I said, he can be like, I'm the guy who, got sold where he is. I'm the one who told him to do all this. I'm the one who told him to, overtake you as tribal chief because you lost to WrestleMania.
Yeah.
You lost the title, you left, you were gone, and Solo stepped in, and I helped him along the way, or something like that. But it would, can you imagine just having The Rock being the mouthpiece for the new bloodline? I mean, The Rock talking in general is just great. He's one of the best promos out there.
It's hard to imagine he wouldn't immediately overshadow Solo Sikoa, though. I mean, just totally, like, you'd almost have to just push Solo aside. Now he's his lackey almost.
Yeah, but that's fine. I mean, we're building for WrestleMania here.
Yeah.
Solo isn't going to be a huge part of WrestleMania. He's not challenging for the world title. It's going to be Cody and Roman and Rock. Some form or fashion is going to be for that title.
Yeah.
And Solo isn't going to be a big part of that. I wouldn't think. So, if you're bringing The Rock in, he's going to overshadow. Yeah, he's going to overshadow Solo, no matter what. I mean, hell, he's going to overshadow pretty much anybody.
Yeah, sure, absolutely.
I mean, you think about during the build-up to the Cody and Roman. I mean, bringing him in, obviously, whatever backstage stuff happened, whose idea it was, who wasn't, what the original plan was not. Bringing The Rock into that story made it so much more interesting and so much better.
Yeah.
So many more layers to it. Having The Rock come back as a bad guy and being involved in wrestling against, Cody and Seth with Roman just added a whole bunch of new twists and turns to it. So bringing The Rock in, man, is just, if it's at the expense of Solo getting pushed to the side a little bit, that's fine.
Yeah.
It's not gonna hurt Solo really, because Solo's still building up to being a main eventer, so he's got time.
Do you think, I guess looking really ahead, just a way too early prediction of WrestleMania, do you think it's going to be a triple threat, Roman versus Rock versus Cody?
I mean, yeah, I can't imagine it wouldn't be. I don't think that you would do Cody versus Rock, which the Raw after WrestleMania last year they kind of, or early this year they kind of teased it like that was what they might do, is Cody versus The Rock.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I don't really know if they're going to have Roman and Cody again. Even if it's a triple threat, obviously would be different. But do you want those guys involved with each other for a third time in a row at WrestleMania in the main event?
Is there a possibility? Is there a possibility it's Rock and Roman and Cody versus someone else entirely? Which one do you think is more likely? I guess is what I'm asking.
I mean, as far as what would make sense, and I think what would be like different, I would say Rock and Roman, especially if they kind of go in that direction of The Rock is the one behind the scenes pulling the strings with Solo and
Yeah.
taking over as tribal chief. It would make a lot of sense for it to be Rock versus Roman Reigns,
Mm-hmm.
which obviously, regardless of the reaction to it, there was a lot of people who wanted to see The Rock and Roman Reigns.
Yeah.
And now it would make more sense because you'd have a babyface Roman Reigns versus a heel Rock. So as far as star power, that's big as you can get. And I think it would free up Cody to be able to wrestle somebody else and put somebody else in that spot of being, a main eventer at WrestleMania going for the WWE title.
Sure.
Now, I don't know who that would be. That's, I guess, the problem is who would be that guy.
So let's go back then. So Crown Jewel, Cody Rhodes, Gunther. They used to do these matches of Survivor Series where the champion of each brand would wrestle, and they since War Games they've moved away from it, and now it looks like it's going to become a staple of the Crown Jewel event. That you're going to have the two champions wrestle for a ring. And I think usually these matches are designed to assert who the top champion is in the company, like, which is super counterintuitive, really dumb. You have two world championships. Why would you explicitly say one champion is better than the other champion? I've never understood thinking.
Well, that's how they've always been, though. It's not like it's a new concept for WWE.
No, it's not. No. But I just mean to say that why would you have the two champions face? Essentially, that just means one championship is more important than the other one, and you're admitting it, right?
Yeah. It. I don't know if it's really saying one's better than the other. It's basically just kind of saying who is the top, champion right now. I guess the top face of the company. I don't.
Well, yeah,
They've always.
that's what I mean, though. Now I'm not saying one specific belt. I'm saying one of the champions is better than the other champion.
Yeah. It's. I suppose it is. Yeah, but I don't think it's really a secret that Cody's the top guy. He's the John Cena white meat babyface of the late 2000s into the early 2010s. That's what he is. So it's not really a secret who the top guy is.
Cody, like you mentioned, he beats Gunther with the small package. Gunther goes out on Raw and tells Ludwig Kaiser that Cody Rhodes deserved his win. He's a man who should be respected. even if they have different viewpoints on the sport of professional wrestling. We've talked about before. I think Gunther and Cody would be a great rivalry. I don't understand why they didn't put Gunther in that position after WrestleMania and start building the Imperium versus Cody Rhodes. Especially after that Royal Rumble match they had at the last year, this year, but earlier in the year. That end, it was 10 minutes of them going back and forth, right?
Yeah, it was pretty much a wrestling match.
And it was fantastic. And you thought, oh well, this must be the guy they're grooming to face Cody after Cody wins the title, and it doesn't happen. Now, of course, Gunther has won the World Heavyweight Championship. He's the face of the Raw brand. For how long, we don't know. But we both love Gunther. We both love Cody Rhodes. Who drops the title? Who drops their title first? Do you think Gunther will lose his first or Cody?
Oh, Gunther.
Gunther.
Yeah, Cody's keeping it till Mania at the very least.
You don't think Gunther will?
I mean, he might. I like I said, I don't. It all depends on what they want to do with Cody. If they want to keep Cody involved with, the Roman and the Rock and all that, then I think there's a very good possibility that both of them could keep it till WrestleMania.
Yeah.
I mean, they've teased. I'm sure. I mean, CM Punk. We forget about him. He's gone, but I mean, he'll be back for WrestleMania season.
He'll be back. He'll be back soon, right?
Yeah. I'm assuming that his injuries were mostly kayfabe.
Right.
I don't think he was actually seriously injured to where he needed to be off. So I mean, he'll be back. Drew McIntyre will be back. So those are a couple guys who could challenge Gunther for the title.
Right.
And also too, I mean, if you think about with Punk, they kind of teased early on him and Cody when Punk first came back and before he got injured.
Yeah.
They kind of had that verbal go back and forth, and they both were the last two at the Royal Rumble. So maybe if you go Roman Rock, maybe you go Cody and Punk for the title.
Sure.
I mean, those are a couple of possibilities that just popped into my head that those Punk's going to be in the main event of one of them.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to say. I mean, you have Rock versus Roman, that's a main event match. I mean, I don't know how to cut it. That's a main event match. You have Cody Rhodes title match. You have the World Heavyweight Championship match. Punk is going to conceivably be in either of those matches. I don't know if I think he's going to wrestle Cody per se, but what are the chances we get Cody versus Orton? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I forgot about that. Cody versus Randy Orton. Now, they've obviously teased it a bunch over the last few weeks of Randy Orton, him looking at the title, him grabbing the title. It's they've been kind of teasing that. So that's another possibility for Cody. To and then I mean you still have Seth Rollins in the mix now.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so many different things you could do for this match. Of these matches for WrestleMania, because obviously it's 2 nights, so you got two nights of shows. So hopefully praying that everybody stays healthy.
Yeah.
This could be a really good build towards WrestleMania with all these different guys in the mix.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think you look at the bullpen in the WWE; it's as strong as it's been in 20 years. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, probably, and especially too because of how last year went, where you had Punk got hurt. The whole thing with the Vince scandal it took Brock Lesnar out of the equation. Mm-hmm. Just so many things going on at the time. It kind of derailed a lot of things I think they wanted to do for WrestleMania. So this year, if they can kind of circle back to some things and have these high-profile matches that people have been wanting to see, I mean, it's going to be a really good WrestleMania card.
We've looked at the men's side fairly, comprehensively. I mean, we didn't look at the mid-card titles, but we have time to do that between now and WrestleMania season beginning. Let's look at the women's side, which I think you could argue on Raw is I mean, the most important part of the show, Liv Morgan, Rhea Ripley. Rhea Ripley was tacked last week on NXT, and it was revealed that she had an orbital fracture, which is a pretty severe injury if it's real. We assume it's not. Is that it's kayfabe, right? I mean,
No, I think it sounds legitimate.
sounds legitimate. Okay.
Yeah, I think like they said like she like I think when she headbutted somebody, I think that's where it happened. So that's why they took her out.
So she'll be gone conceivably until WrestleMania season. It sounds like. We talked about. Ironically, I think the first episode of this show, Bad Blood, the preview we did, we talked about can you make this feud last until WrestleMania, and you thought so. I had my doubts. Now it seems like they've preserved this, possibly until WrestleMania. You could have these two, have the blow off at WrestleMania. Liv Morgan's still the Raw Women's Champion, which is that the World Women's Championship?
Yeah, it's the Liv Morgan's is the Women's World Heavyweight Championship.
Yes. Okay.
And then Nia Jax is the WWE Women's Championship.
Yes. So Io Sky won a battle royal on Raw to determine the next contender for Liv's title. It looks like all signs point to those two at Survivor Series, I guess, or maybe would it be a War Games match?
I'm not sure. I don't know how that's
It's sort of up in the air right now. I mean, we have a lot of time to decide how that's going to go, but
yeah.
Would you be excited? Excuse me, for Io Sky versus Liv Morgan at a pay-per-view? At a PLE, sorry, premium live event. I hope they're not going to take me out back and shoot me in the leg for saying it wrong. Premium live event.
I mean, kind of. I guess. I mean, I like Io Sky. She's a great wrestler.
Mm-hmm.
Liv, for whatever you think of her, she's improved a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, she's got a lot of heat with the crowd. The thing with her and Dominic has been a main part of the show. I mean, as far as obviously, it's not the star power match that people typically want, but when you kind of get to that point when you're in the slower part of trying to build up towards Mania,
Mm-hmm.
you're going to have types of match like that where certain people are in the match and it's not really that interesting. So I mean, it'll be a good fill-in women's championship match. I don't think Io's not going to win it, so
Sure.
but I mean, it'll be an okay match.
Right now, obviously, we don't have Becky Lynch, we don't have Charlotte Flair. I don't know how much we talked about this on the show off the top of my head, but I know personally we've had this conversation for probably about a year now that the WWE Women's Division is, because it's splintered between the brands and a lot of women are on NXT, it's pretty thin right now. There's not a lot of stars. And on Raw, there's not a lot of women wrestlers that have been featured in a long time because the Liv and Rhea Ripley thing has just absorbed so much time and energy. Do they need Becky Lynch and Charlotte Flair to come back, or do you think Liv Morgan can retain interest in her reign until WrestleMania without some other big name stars? Like you just said, I mean, Io Sky versus Liv Morgan is not exactly the big money match you'd want to see at a pay-per-view I'm just gonna keep calling pay-per-views at a pay-per-view. So what do you?
I think no, I don't think she can retain the attention until Mania. I don't think she doesn't have that. I mean, she's a star, but she's not a superstar like Charlotte Flair or Becky Lynch. Like most of the time, I don't think people are gonna tune in to see Liv Morgan.
Yeah.
Like solely to see like, oh, Liv Morgan's on, I got to change channel. Not to the level of like Charlotte, Becky, Rhea Ripley, Bianca when she's not in the tag team, people like that. So I don't think she'll be able to keep the attention. I mean, people are gonna watch the show no matter who's on it. WWE's just on such a hot streak.
Yeah.
So I don't think they really have an issue there. But as far as Charlotte and Becky, I mean, those two coming back. I mean, what a shot in the arm that would be to have both of them come back and be reintroduced into the women's title scene in both shows, whoever goes where.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think they are sorely missed right now.
Yeah.
And especially too, one other thing I was going to say with Rhea when she comes back. I mean, obviously Rhea's the top women's wrestler in the company right now.
In the
One
world.
of the most, yeah, one of the most, one of the most popular for sure. At the very least, one of the most popular. And it's kind of getting to a point where it's like they've made her look so dominant that who else is there for her to face? I mean, you can't just have her keep facing Liv Morgan over and over again.
Yeah.
She's beaten Raquel a bunch of times already. I mean, obviously, her and Charlotte at WrestleMania 2 years ago was one of the best matches on the show. And then, obviously, her and Becky last year was a good, okay match. Obviously, they were sick and all kinds of things were happening. So, I think it would benefit them too to have more main event caliber people for her to work with. Because I mean, you're kind of running low on people for Rhea Ripley to go against.
I feel like they need a really great baby face to accentuate Rhea Ripley's heel qualities because it's hard to make her a baby face. Is that fair? In terms of booking the women's roster, it's hard for her to be a baby face because she's so dominant. She beats everyone.
Well, no, I mean she's definitely a baby face. I mean
No,
she's
I'm
one
not
of those.
saying she's clearly a baby face. What I'm saying is that for the rest of the roster, it's detrimental because she beats everyone, right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean it's kind of becoming, and I've seen a couple people mention this. It's becoming like WWE's Rhea Ripley problem.
Yeah.
Like they don't like she's so dominant and she looks dominant.
Yeah.
That you kind of have to figure out, okay, who is going to be the one to be able to give her a challenge.
Yeah.
So yeah, that definitely is becoming an issue.
Yeah. And it reminds me a lot. You talk about Cody a lot, like Cena. It reminds me a lot of John Cena in that not that John Cena looks as physically imposing as Rhea does, relatively speaking, but Cena won so much, got to a point where it's like, oh my god, he's a baby face and he never loses.
Yeah,
Faces adversity. It's hard to. I'm not obviously people like rooting for her for reasons that don't involve wrestling. I think for the most part, but they also don't have many great baby faces in the women's division.
yeah. I mean, I think and even in the case of Cena, he at least had people he could work with.
Yeah.
That would be interesting to people to watch. I mean, obviously, yeah, John won a ton, because he was the man. But it's even worse with Rhea because they don't have that that grouping of people for her to go up against. I mean, like we said right now, I mean, the sad part is that there are people that she could work with that would be interesting to watch.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously they've teased her and Bianca before. That would be a really great, interesting match. And Bianca's obviously physically imposing too, so that would make sense. Her and Charlotte have had great matches before. Her and Becky can have great matches. So there's people she can work with.
Yeah.
They just the way that they have everything set up right now, it's not conducive to have her feud with them right now because they have everything that she's doing tied up with Liv Morgan and Dominic.
Yeah.
And it's like to the point where okay, the her and Dominic thing was cool. It was interesting. It got a lot of attention, but now it's kind of time just to just let that go.
Yeah.
And let her kind of take her wherever you want her to be, the top woman baby face, or you want her to be a monster heel, whatever. But kind of split her off from that and let her go in different directions. Because right now you're kind of handicapping everything that she does to whatever Dominic's doing.
Yeah. Speaking of Bianca Belair, I guess this is the last topic in regards to the women's division. God, her slapping the hell out of Liv Morgan on Raw was jarring.
Yeah.
On television. You have this tag team, her and Jade Cargill. Like all tag teams in the WWE that are kind of formed hastily, it seems like they're destined to collide at some point, and implode. Bianca Belair has, notably an undefeated streak at WrestleMania. Do you foresee this match being at WrestleMania? Do you think that Jade should win it, should lose it? Um, I think we're both tired of Bianca Belair being tied up in a tag team. I think I can speak for us both in saying that because she's so great and she was such a great champion. She's sorely missed in the singles division. What do you think about where this feud is going?
Well, if I can put it bluntly, I don't want to see that match at all. Like in any form, I don't want to see Bianca have to face Jade.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not trying to throw any shade at Jade, but I mean Bianca, she should be involved in the title picture
Mm-hmm.
at WrestleMania because of what we just talked about. How there's so few top caliber women there. She's one of them. So they they should have her involved in something, whether it's her facing Nia Jax, whether it's her facing Liv, something for the title. She should be involved in that. Whether it's her wrestling Rhea, they need to have her involved in that. And to use her in a match against Jade, because I mean, let's face it. I mean, we've seen Jade wrestle. There's a reason why they put her in a tag team because she's not that great of a wrestler.
Mm-hmm.
She's got one of the best looks in the women's division right now, no question. She's got that aura about her, I guess, if you will. But to waste a WrestleMania match with Bianca and Jade is just that would be such a travesty.
Jade Cargill, if we talk about the trifecta, it's look, mic skills, work. Work is not great, mic skills not great, look is great. Jade Cargill has a great presentation, but it really stops there. And this is from two guys that watched her run in AEW pretty closely. I mean, we watched probably every TBS match she had, and TBS championship match, and you know she just has not improved much. And I would dare to even say, she wrestles less than she did in AEW. It feels like. I think I mean, she might even be worse than she was in AEW. Yeah, I agree with you. It would be a disservice to Bianca Belair to have that match. I mean, and at the very least, she needs to win it, right? I think I can.
Oh,
At the very least, she needs to win that match and parlay it into a bigger profile. But
that's what I'm saying too. Like that match it would be it would be a lose lose too
yeah,
because if Bianca wins as she should, then you're killing off Jade any chance she has of being a top star. And then if Jade beats Bianca, I mean that just would be so bad because obviously, as we said, Jade's not a good wrestler. It's pretty consensus with people that she's not. So if she were to beat Bianca, that would really make Bianca look bad.
mhm.
And obviously, if Jade Cargill is the one to end her undefeated streak at WrestleMania, that would just be all around bad. So it would be a really lose lose situation. So that's why I'm hoping that they don't have that be at Mania. If you want to have it like at the Royal Rumble or something, or at the Elimination Chamber or whatever, but don't have that as being the Mania match for Bianca.
Um, Pivoting from WWE entirely, something that both you and I have both been really interested in is on the AEW side, the Hurt Syndicate. The last, I guess, a week and a half ago now, Bobby Lashley debuted at Fright Night Dynamite, the October 30th edition. Um, he laid out Swerve Strickland, put him in the Hurt Lock. This week, he came out with Shelton Benjamin and MVP. MVP cut a really great promo about who the Hurt Syndicate is and what their intent is, and that if they gave you a business card and you decline, you're their enemy. And Swerve comes out, very brief. He wants Bobby Lashley in full gear. MVP accepts. So the match is on. It's going to be Swerve Strickland, Bobby Lashley at full gear. I guess just to start, 1 to 10 level of excitement for Bobby Lashley versus Swerve Strickland in full gear.
Uh, I mean, I guess for me personally, I would say probably I would say an 8 or 9.
Yeah,
I wouldn't give it a full 10 because I'm not the biggest Swerve Strickland fan.
sure.
So that's why I wouldn't give it the full level 10. But I would say 8 or 9. I mean, Bobby versus Swerve, it'll be a big time match. Swerve's a former AEW World Champion, so it's a big time match, and I think it kind of shows how they're gonna push Bobby Lashley in AEW. I mean, his first match being against the former AEW world champion.
Yeah. What would your preferred outcome be for that match?
Well, Bobby should win. First off,
Okay.
no question. I don't see any argument you could make that Swerve should win. You know, um, especially because it kind of seems like they're really going to push the Hurt Syndicate. Um, so I think Bobby should win. I mean, I kind of think that you should really kind of make it like a dominating win.
Really?
Now I'm not talking like Brock Lesnar, John Cena dominant in I think what 2013 when Brock just beat the hell out of him and won the title. I'm not talking like that. I'm not saying make Swerve like a punk, but have it make it look like Bobby is just this unstoppable force. Because that's what he looks like. And I think you should book him accordingly. Because I mean, you look at how they've made Shelton Benjamin look so far. I mean,
Yep.
they've made Shelton look like dominant, and obviously Bobby's twice his size. You know, um, so I think that Bobby should win for one, and that they should make Bobby look really strong.
Bobby is. It's no secret. Jordan and I are huge Bobby Lashley fans. We're not gonna hide that. He was a big. When I got into WWE, Lesnar was gone. So when I really started watching it seriously, I should say, Lesnar was gone. So Lashley was the only guy that really had that combination of speed, size, and strength. There were guys who were maybe as big as him, but not as fast, and certainly they didn't have the credentials that he does as an amateur wrestler. I guess before I give my thoughts, just out of curiosity, and you can make it quick if you want. How long do you want this feud to go? I mean, one pay-per-view, two pay-per-views. Should it last until 2020? Early 2025. What do you think about that?
Um, I mean, I don't know how much mileage you can get out of this. Um, I mean, I think maybe 2 or 3 matches
Okay.
maybe out of it. I don't know what the justification would be for this to be a long running thing. Um, unless I don't know if Swerve gets people to back him up to go against the Hurt Syndicate. Uh,
Possible.
yeah, I mean, if you do something like that, maybe, but I don't see how it would be. It would make sense for it to be 3-on-1 for Swerve, and especially because Bobby comes in and he beats Swerve. Maybe you could have Swerve because obviously Swerve beat Shelton.
Yeah.
So maybe you circle back to that and have a match there. It's kind of hard to say. It's hard to say right now where the Hurt Syndicate's going to go because they just got there.
Yeah.
Um, obviously they've been kind of teasing the stuff with Ricochet.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if they bring Ricochet into the Hurt Syndicate. They obviously MVP said before when they were in the Hurt business in WWE that they were down to Ricochet and Cedric Alexander as who was going to be that fourth member of the Hurt business. So you bring Ricochet in, and maybe they go different directions there, or if it's a situation where they're a group but they also pursue individual things.
Yeah. Sure. Sure.
Kind of like how Evolution was in the mid 2000s, where you had Randy going after the Intercontinental title, Triple H going after the World title, Batista and Flair with tag titles. If it kind of becomes something like that, so it's kind of hard to say right now because it's early with
Yeah.
the Hurt Syndicate.
Um, I agree with you in the sense that I don't think, there are AEW fans who would say, well, if you have Bobby beat Swerve Strickland, you're um, dampening the value of your former champion and the top star in Swerve Strickland. And I guess I see that in regards to, you don't just want to keep bringing guys in and have them go over on AEW guys, but you, you have Bobby lose his first match at a pay per view when you have built him up as being a big deal. I mean, if you want the Hurt Syndicate to retain credibility, you would think that you would have at least a draw, at least they go Broadway, maybe 30 minutes, maybe whatever. Maybe they have an Iron Man match. I don't know. Maybe he wins by interference. I don't know, but I would like to see this go at least a few matches. At least they do one at Full Gear and one at World's End. I would enjoy that. The problem with AEW is they don't have a pay per view in January. They do World's End in December at the end. Well, I guess they have Wrestle Dynasty, which is a joint show with New Japan that they're doing. This is going to be the first event in the Tokyo Dome. But then they don't have another pay per view until February, Grand Slam in Australia. So you have that gap of time where you're just doing stuff on television. But yeah, I don't think. I hope this doesn't. I hope this isn't a one and done. I hope this continues onward. And like you said, I maybe Swerve enlist some help from other people. Maybe Ricochet helps him. Maybe I mean, I don't want to get granular, but
They had Powerhouse Hobbs came back, right?
House Hobbs came back. Yeah, he worked with Ricochet. Maybe it's the three of them. Maybe Powerhouse Hobbs joins the Hurt Syndicate. I don't know. I like what you said about evolution, though, and I think that oftentimes, there's things like the Bloodline where it's group versus group, and they all kind of work, or just a group having one common goal versus a group like Evolution where you're going after different things, right? And Continental Classics coming up. I think Shelton Benjamin would be great for that event. I'd like to see Shelton Benjamin win a tag team championship again and have actually a really great partner who he competes with. And Shelton Benjamin's a great tag team wrestler. Time will tell, but I don't know. I'm happy to see Lashley in AEW. To me, Lashley's, because he was in Impact for a while, TNA. I don't think of him as a WWE guy. I think of him as just a wrestler, as a guy who's world traveled. To me, I mean, I feel like that.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, Bobby's, I think I kind of think of him as a WWE guy solely because he was just recently the WWE champion. Obviously not recently, but
Sure.
while he was there, he was WWE champion. They had the whole thing with the Hurt Business, which was a huge deal. So I've always kind of thought of him as being that, as being somewhat of a WWE guy.
Yeah.
But you bring him in, yeah, he's he's a WWE guy, and it's kind of the old TNA adage of, well, you're bringing all these former WWE guys in, and they're beating the guys who are there. But I mean, you're trying to grow the ratings. I mean, you're trying to gain eyeballs onto your show.
Yeah.
And in order to do that, you have to have big names.
Mm-hmm.
And Bobby Lashley, MVP, Shelton Benjamin are big names.
Yeah.
And especially if you're bringing Bobby in, and Bobby's a main event guy. Shelton, you can make the case that he's not really that. So yeah, Swerve beats him. It's not surprising, but if you're bringing a guy of Bobby Lashley's caliber in there, yeah, he's going to win the match. Like, I get the frustration with the WWE guys thing, but you're trying to gain interest.
Yeah.
That's what you're trying to do. That's why you bring those guys in. The ratings, I think this past week for the show were like 532,000.
Yeah.
Or something, so what are you gonna do? What you have is not working. So you've got to bring in big name guys to bring eyeballs to your product.
It's ironic because I think they're doing a better job of I don't want to say exactly telling stories, but telling more concise, clear stories. Utilizing the guys they have, and I think, especially, I think for so long they've had a problem of they've protected guys. They bring a guy in and they don't want him to lose, and it starts hampering business because now you're waiting for people to come back, or you're waiting for things to happen where people don't have to take losses, and I think that it's harmed the company for a while. And I feel like in the last few pay-per-views, we've seen some really great matches between guys who you would normally think, well, that guy's not going to lose a match, and now he has to because he's facing someone else that's like that. For example, Hangman and Jay White, that's a match that you would think, well, they're not going to put those two together because one of them has to lose.
Yeah.
Now they've done that. Swerve Strickland and Bobby Lashley comes to mind. Um, I think MJF and Adam Cole's like that, where you put these guys together, and I mean, I guess it's maybe not so much for MJF because he can bounce back from anything, but now he beat Daniel Garcia, but after the match, he got beaten up by Daniel Garcia. He lost to Will Ospreay before that. You can have him lose again,
Yeah, I mean, losses don't hurt. We're not going to hurt somebody as long as the person who beats them, it makes sense.
Yes.
Like if a main event guy beats another main event guy, that's not going to hurt the guy who lost because they're both main event guys. I mean, unless the match is just a squash match. If it's a competitive match between two guys who are, of somewhat equal caliber, like Hangman Page and Jay White.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Like I don't think less of either one of those guys if they lose to the other, because it makes sense. So yeah, I mean, as long as you're not just having any Joe Schmo beat somebody, it's not going to hurt them in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah. Well, do you have anything you want to add? Anything of note recently you want to talk about before we sign off?
Well, I guess I would bring up something that I had mentioned in one of the other shows and I think Bobby and the Hurt Syndicate coming in is a good time to bring it back up about the whole, does AEW have too many, former WWE guys? Is that an issue? We kind of just touched on it a little bit, but do you think that that's a problem now that you have, a WWE concept with the Hurt Syndicate, which originally was the Hurt Business?
Yeah.
Is it a bad thing that that's now in AEW, and obviously they're going to be a big part of the show? Is that a problem for AEW that they keep bringing in WWE guys and they're making them a big part of the show? I mean, obviously Adam Copeland was most recently TNT champion until he got hurt.
Yeah.
They just brought in Ricochet, and he's been a part of the international championship title picture. They kind of brought these guys in, and I mean, Mercedes Moné, obviously she's the TBS champion right now. Mm-hmm. Is that a problem that these former WWE guys and girls are, as soon as they're brought in, they're a big deal at the expense of AEW wrestlers who've been there since the start or have been there for most of their time as wrestlers?
Well, I suppose it's case by case. I mean, this is a huge talking point for fans of AEW, fans of the original AEW, or people who are the grifters or whatever you want to call them, the people that admonish the company whenever they get the chance. When AEW began, you have to think, yeah, it was Kenny Omega, the Young Bucks, and Hangman Page, but it was also Cody Rhodes, former WWE guy. First AEW champion was Chris Jericho, obviously former WWE guy. Second champion was Jon Moxley, former WWE guy. You look at three of the first four TNT champions were WWE guys, right? Cody Rhodes, Brody Lee, Darby won it, and then Miro won it. So that's three of the first four. I mean, Christian Cage would go on to hold that title. Adam Copeland would go on to hold the title. So, I mean, and since then, guys have held the world title. Samoa Joe, Bryan Danielson, Swerve Strickland is a former WWE guy. So I don't want to like blanket statement. No, I don't want to paint with a broad brush. But case by case, yeah. I mean, you look at how they brought Saraya in, and they just thought just her name alone and the following that she has would inject life into the women's division, and it probably set it back for like 6 months to a year more than it helped it at all. I mean, eventually you got Tony Storm and the Outcast out of it, and that parlayed into timeless Tony Storm, but that took like a year for that to happen, and it wasn't intentional. It was Tony Storm turned chicken shit into chicken salad. I think Adam Copeland has been used well for the most part. I didn't like the Christian Cage feud exactly, but I think after that, and the Cope Open was great, and some of the matches he's had have been good. And when he was there, he brought a lot of eyes to Collision that I think were lost or would have been lost when CM Punk left. But like I said, it's case by case. I mean, Swerve Strickland is a perfect example of a success. He didn't come in and immediately get pushed, but he was a WWE guy who found his way and turned into something really special. It's just a matter of the consistency they give the Hurt Syndicate and letting those guys do what they do best. And they're all three great professional wrestlers, whether they're in the ring or talking. All three of those guys complement each other really well. It's not always bad to take a carbon copy from something from one company and bring it to another, because it's all about what the contrast is, who you're working with, and how different it can look. Because AEW, for all of its flaws, it is different than the WWE. The wrestlers are different, the roster is different, the style's different, and styles make programs interesting, right? So it depends who they work with. I certainly don't hope. I mean, it's tough because right now you have the Death Riders, who are the top faction in the company because their top guy has the championship. So how far can the Hurt Syndicate go as a heel faction when they're on top? It's tough. I mean, you're kind of, a little shackled in that regard, right?
Yeah. I mean, for sure. And I think too, to the point, it really, yeah, like you said, it's case by case. You bring in big names like MVP, Bobby Lashley, and Shelton Benjamin. Those guys are going to be an integral part of the show.
Yeah.
They just have that gravitas. A guy like Ricochet, obviously, his style fits AEW, so it made sense. He was kind of better suited to be in AEW. And yeah, I think overall it really depends, who they work with, what the outcomes are, as long as they're not just beating the hell out of, every main event guy in the company.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think it benefits them in the long run.
And Shelton Benjamin and Bobby Lashley are 49 years old each. They're not going to be around for long. Now, could they be around as long as Chris Jericho is stuck around? Yeah, they could, but I don't know that will happen. And you have MVP, who is all around just a great signing. On screen, off screen, backstage. He could be a manager for years down the road. He doesn't have to wrestle, and he could help a lot of guys. He could help. I could probably rattle off 10 names he could help right now if he were given the opportunity. So how long will the Hurt Syndicate even last, and what can it be forayed into? Infinite possibilities. It's just a matter of who you have them work with and how you use them to get other guys over. That's all. I mean, none of those guys have to be champions. They have great legacies already.
Yeah. Well, to that point, is Bobby Lashley a future AEW World Champion? Is Shelton Benjamin a future TNT champion? Is there any future for those guys in that realm, or are they just kind of being used to put guys over?
I think down the road, Shelton Benjamin will be a tag team champion. I think he could be a tag team champion. Bobby Lashley, it's tough because it's not like Samoa Joe. Samoa Joe has years left he could wrestle, and I guess Lashley does too. But do you put a 49-year-old? Do you make a 49-year-old the champion when you have young guys who you really need to start putting the title on? I don't know. It's tough to say. in a year from now, maybe so. Maybe he might have a short run like Samoa Joe did, where he has it a few months and he is a transitional champion. I could definitely see that happening.
Yeah, I think it will add to the AEW World Championship to have a guy of Bobby Lashley's caliber hold it.
Yes.
And also, and I mean, also too, you have to think we're kind of thinking down the road. It's Darby's probably going to hold it with this whole thing with Moxley, or maybe Orange Cassidy. You look at those guys, and then you look at Bobby Lashley, and you're kind of like, if those guys are world champion, then there's no reason why Bobby Lashley can't be.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the reason I'm thinking. Like Bobby has the look of a world champion. He's been a world champion. He was the WWE champion, the biggest company in the world. So I think it would only benefit them to have him be a champion, however long it lasts. I think it only adds to the prestige of that title.
Oh, and the guy that beats him will be over as hell because the one of the biggest guys in wrestling. I mean, physically, one of the most physically imposing guys in wrestling. Yeah, for sure. And just having his name a part of the lineage is, I think, important. If you're not going to have young guys, they should be guys who are legends, veritable legends, and I think Bobby Lashley is one of them.
Absolutely.
Yeah, well, I think that is it for this episode. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
No. I think we covered everything. Everything that's kind of pertinent going on right now.
Yeah. We have a big episode coming next week. I'm not gonna spoil it, but it's another list. Something we've been working on. We're excited to share with you guys. I did an interview with a former professional wrestler named Mark Fleming earlier this week. It'll be on the internet soon, probably linked in this video somewhere, or in the description. It's a lot of fun. Guy wrestled for Mid-Atlantic Championship Wrestling, New Japan, UWFI against some MMA guys. Well, they weren't MMA guys then, but they ultimately became it. Hit a 20-minute match with Ken Shamrock. Really interesting. This guy was a protege of Luthez, so I look forward to sharing that with everyone. But, as always, thank you guys for checking us out. Follow us on Twitter. Subscribe to the channel, like the video, share it. Thank you all for your support. And that's it. We'll see you guys next week.
Thank you, everybody.
Top Dogs out.